Welcome to the Everything Co-working podcast. This is your host, Jamie Russo. I'm so glad you're joining me today. For anybody who's new, welcome to the podcast. This is a topic I don't think I've ever covered before on the podcast. I cover this a lot in our co-working startup school because we help folks who are starting co-working spaces choose their tech stack, including their co-working space management platforms. That's what we're going to talk about today. The reason I'm covering it on the podcast is because it keeps coming up in our Facebook group. And I don't spend a lot of time in our Facebook group because I'm spending time in our paid programs, but I always like to know what's happening in there and see what questions are being asked and what answers are being given. And this question about switching co-working space platforms keeps coming up. So let's talk about that today. If you're tuning in, I'm guessing you're a co-working space operator, or maybe you're about to open a space and you're looking for ways to make sure that your co-working space business runs smoothly and efficiently, keeps it easy for you and your team, and is a great experience for your members. So one of the biggest decisions you make is what co-working space management platform are you going to use? Now, primarily for your members, this platform is going to be where they manage their billing, manage their plan, maybe submit tickets like support requests to you, and book meeting rooms. On the back end, this platform is going to help you and your team bill your members, manage your inventory, manage your plans so that you can have members sign up for plans. It's going to support e-commerce most of the time. So it'll allow your members to use credits that you set up with their plans to book meeting rooms, or they can pay, or non-members can pay and buy on-demand resources such as meeting rooms, day passes, day offices, etc. So it plays an important role in your business. I do want to point out, though, that the co-working tech stack is rather intense because your space management platform will cover the functions we just discussed, and then it integrates into the other apps that you'll use. I always think of it as a hub and spoke model with your space management platform in the middle. It's kind of your quarterback of your space. And then the other apps that you use, such as door access, your CRM, your email service provider, those are the spokes, and your hub, your co-working space management platform, should integrate directly, hopefully, with the spoke apps that you're using, like your door access, your CRM. And if they don't have direct integrations, Zapier can solve most of those problems for you. So just keep in mind, if you're new and you don't use one of these platforms yet, it does not do everything. It does handle some core functionality. And I will say, if you're not an operator yet, or you're a smaller operator and you keep thinking, should I really be paying for this? I will say, like, the primary functionality that you really need from these apps is the meeting room booking functionality. You can charge members if you have a smaller space. There's lots of like workarounds that may not be as efficient, but might be cheaper. You may not have as much inventory to manage, so maybe that's less of a big deal. You may not have a lot of plans to keep track of, so maybe that's not a big deal for you. But it's almost impossible to find some other solution that manages member credits and the ability to purchase meeting rooms on demand through your own interface and your own website. There are platforms like flexspace.ai that can live kind of on top of your website, but in terms of kind of piecing together other solutions, like an Acuity for your booking room, it's doable. I think Acuity has a functionality that can kind of do that. And so the meeting room booking functionality is really important. And that's one of the core reasons why you want to have a space management platform. And lots of other reasons. Most co-working space operators will operate on one. I'm just thinking about the folks that are smaller and run a pretty simple business, and you may be thinking, I don't need this. We see people in the Facebook group saying, oh, I use Zoho plus this, and I can do it for $500 a year. So it's possible to kind of hack around this, but most of you are going to find it most efficient for you and your team. And remember, your team is going to turn over every couple of years. So for training purposes, and for your member experience to use one of the platforms. Now, here's the thing about these platforms. They are all pretty much brand new. So I started operating in the very beginning of 2012, and I'm pretty sure Cube was around. I can't remember what it was called. I don't know if it was still called Cube. So it's now Yardi Cube. I think I started with Stripe and didn't have a meeting room reservation app at the time. And then Sam Rosen, people may not remember this, but he used to operate co-working spaces in Chicago. He had two at one time. He was the first one in Chicago. It was 2,000 square feet-ish with all open desks, no offices. He shared it with his agency. So he went from running co-working spaces to creating software to manage the co-working spaces and had a platform called Desk Time app. So I was in Chicago and I knew Sam. And so I beta tested that platform. And then I operated in Palo Alto and we used Salesforce and some other combinations. So these were like early days. So all the like Optics, CoWorks, Archie, all the folks that are out there now did not exist all that long ago. So in the last 10 years, these platforms are all new: Office R&D, proximity, etc. So this is important to keep in mind because software is complicated. It's complex and it takes years and years for it to get really amazing. So these platforms are all great. I suspect that if you're thinking about switching, it might be a grass is always greener sort of view. And it might be some frustration with just the cycle of co-working software that we're in because it's still pretty new. So, Office R&D has teams of engineers, that they work with that are working on advancing the software every single day. And the others, have variations of that. So I'm not familiar with the resources that all of the platforms have. I do want to say before we talk about the idea of switching, please don't think about building your own unless I can't even think of a reason you would want to build your own. The co-working total addressable market is not very big. So we have a lot of space management platforms competing for not a lot of operators. So in my opinion, we don't need any more. And building software is a major undertaking. I mean, Office R&D is like I know their team pretty well. And so I use them as an example. They're a company, they have a lot of people across a lot of functions in their company, customer service, marketing, customer success, sales. I mean, they have every department that a real company has and a lot of engineers. So you can build your own software, but it's not going to go very far if you don't turn it into a large company. And I just don't know if we have room for any more. So your frustrations may be totally real with some of the aspects of today's software, but you're taking on a major challenge if you want to get into developing your own software, and you would not be the first one to try. Workbar in the early days developed their own. I think Common Desk might have pursued their own. Hub Australia. These big brands definitely thought we can do this better, and then they gave it all up. And they all use what's in the marketplace now. So please keep that in mind if you are thinking about switching platforms. 3 questions to ask yourself. Is my current system really that bad? Or do I just have some sort of software and envy or that sense that the grass is greener elsewhere? We've certainly all had those days where something happens, something glitches, something goes down, and we think it's totally unacceptable and we want to change. Again, I totally get it. But no, that can happen across platforms. Second question you want to ask, if I switch, how painful will it be? It sounds easy. Someone in the Facebook group was like, oh, I only have 35 members. Okay, if you have office members who are not going to leave you over this, then okay, I'll buy that. It's a lot of work for your team. I will say what's easier when you're switching is that you have made decisions. The hard part about getting started on a platform, right, is you've never used one of these interfaces before. Maybe they don't seem all that intuitive, and you have to make a lot of decisions about the plans that you're creating. How many meeting room hours does everybody get? You have to set up all of your integrations. So there's a lot of stuff that's new all at once and decisions that you have to make. So you have to make all your business decisions before you can do your onboarding for a platform. So if you're a going concern, if you've been operating, you've made all these decisions and now you're just moving the platform, but you do have to move over your members. You have to teach them a new interface. So that's not a great experience. Give it some thought. Your team has to get onboarded into a new platform. Sorry, let me circle back to your customers. You cannot port over credit card information. So there's a lot of stuff that can get ported over and that, the new software may offer to support that transition, which is awesome if it's really important to you and if it makes sense. Your customers' credit cards cannot move over. So you have to go get new payment methods from every single customer. Now, again, if you have offices that are under contract, this may be no big deal. If you have a bunch of FlexSpace members that are paying you but not coming to the space, that's a separate conversation about how to manage that. But if you don't want to poke the bear, then asking for new credit card information is asking for cancellation. So keep that in mind. I am an absolute fan of having a customer success program in place so that you don't have people who aren't using your space and still paying you, that they're very aware if they're not using, or they're being encouraged by your team to come in and actually use the space. So maybe you don't have any bears that are going to get poked, but just keep in mind that when you're asking people for a credit card change, they're going to evaluate, do I want to keep paying for this or not? Just like when we do price increases. That doesn't mean it's not worth it. I'm just saying, just know what you're getting into. And then think through, will this new system actually grow with my business, or will I have to, do this again? So just make sure if you've been operating one location and you have a platform that worked great for that, and now you're scaling and there's something really important to you that your current platform doesn't have, like data and analytics might be an example, then it may make sense to switch, and just make sure that you're kind of looking ahead. Like if you're going from 1 to 2 locations, but in the next 5 years, you're going to go to 5 locations, make sure you're thinking about what that might look like and what your requirements will be. So, okay, let's dive into these segments, these questions that you should ask yourself a little more deeply. And again, I'm not saying don't switch. I'm just saying the switching conversation seems to come up a lot, and it's a lot of work. So just make sure you're thinking through and making sure it's the right business decision, and it totally might be. And so this is just a way to sort of prepare you and your team as you make this transition. Okay, so question number 1 that we'll dive into here: what's broken or missing in your current system? Why do you want to switch? Is your current software truly not working for you? Or are you just seeing people in the Facebook group rave about a certain software and you get excited and you think, oh, I have a little time on my hands. Let me distract myself with this shiny object instead of automating my Google reviews. Hint, hint. So, okay, but here are some pain points that you might have that might be a reason to change. The user experience is clunky. Members struggle to book rooms or update billing or manage their memberships. Look, I have respect for all of the platforms, and I think they all work reasonably well across the board. So I would guess you're probably 70% happy with what you have now, but there might be something in there that's not working well for you or that just drives you nuts. Sometimes it's personal preference, right? Like sometimes we just want something different and we want it to work a certain way, and that's fine. Yesterday, I was super irritated. We are moving some of our email system over to CoLevel, which is an all-in-one. You're going to get to, if you're doing our Google Review Challenge, you'll get a chance to demo it. It's an all-in-one, like rest of the tech stack for co-working. So we've been using it with clients and we're using it for our own business. And I couldn't get the emoji keyboard to pop up and I wanted to lose my mind. It's like, I miss ActiveCampaign. That's a dumb thing to get worked up over, but sometimes you just want what you want. What you're looking for is data and analytics. You have to manually track occupancy rates, revenue churn. You're looking for something that is a little more done for you versus having to dump it out and do pivot tables and all those things. Maybe there's something with invoicing that you don't like. You haven't figured out an integration. I will say, here's my advice. If you have something that's not working very well for you, Most of the platforms, again, do most of the things. So if there's something specific you're struggling with, you can't figure out the QuickBooks integration with Office R&D, go into the Facebook group and ask about that specifically, or join one of our programs. Get into the Community Manager University group or our operator membership and ask there, because there are lots of resources who can help you with that. Our team can help you with that too. So feel free to reach out if there are struggles that you're having. Maybe that fits into, we can tell you what program that we have for support that you might fit into. So if it's something specific, it's possible that it's doable and you haven't gotten there yet. Maybe you hit the wrong customer service person in the customer support group and they just didn't quite give you the right answer. It's totally possible that it's doable and that you don't actually need to change. So poke around, and also if there's something that you're looking for, maybe it's on the roadmap. I know roadmaps can be tricky because what you want might be really far down the road. The space management platforms are thinking like 80-20, right? So what are the 20% of things they can improve in the software that make 80% of their users happy? If you have some like weird thing that you want done in the software, they're not doing that just for you, unless you were a really big user, because they have to manage their resources. And again, they have to 80-20 everything. So just, be careful about having realistic expectations. Okay, so how hard will it be to switch? So the three things you sort of have to manage: data migration. So you have to get all of your member data, your plans, historical records, all that stuff moved over. Here's what I would do. If you're looking at a new platform because you need better reporting or because you like their meeting room booking or their e-commerce interface, then talk to that provider about what migration support they provide and have them walk you through that workflow. What's it going to look like? How does the transfer work? What transfers? What doesn't? What's going to go into the new system? What are you going to lose? So that you are really clear about the trade-offs and, again, like what data is going to go with you and what you might lose. And then understand what the new provider is going to help you with in terms of migration and what your team's going to have to do and what might be manual, and really, figure out if and when you have the capacity to do that. And this, I'm just going to throw this out there. If you're serious about moving platforms, you might want to hire a VA to help with things like this. I mean, this is a simple example, but we're trying to launch our new website and all the podcast episodes need to get moved. And there's a little bit of some like data stream that you can send over, but there's a whole lot of manual stuff. So we will probably go to Upwork and find someone that, a VA that's just kind of a task doer that can just power through that stuff over time, at a lower dollar per hour rate than our team. So something to think about. Does it make sense to get some external help if you have to do some manual data moving or re-entry, that kind of thing? Okay, again, payment processing. You will have to get all your members to re-enter their credit card information. This doesn't have to be wildly painful, but it won't. You'll have some period of time where you'll be in transition because you won't be able to track down X number of members because they're busy and they just simply aren't doing it. So your billing could be off for some time. So either you have to run two systems at a time, I don't even know what that would look like, or you have to make the change and know that if the member doesn't move their credit card over, you don't have a payment from them. And then your revenue may be short on the transition month. So you're going to want to think through, again, the workflow. How are you going to manage this with your customers, your members? You're going to have to this is going to be a big change management project because your team needs to be really on board, and maybe they're the ones requesting the move. So they're excited about it. There's functionality that they need to make their lives easier that might be done with a new platform, but they will have to probably do the hounding of the members. You don't want the members to feel annoyed and want to go somewhere else. So you really want to think about the full transition process, a calendar, a workflow, and think of it really carefully from your membership's perspective. What's going to be a pain? How can you make it easier? Can you bribe them? Hot cocoa bars? Let's have a party and switch our credit card information. Everybody at once. Switch your credit card information and here's your mocktail. and your, taco bar or whatever. But think about, even if tend to not be great at those things because I'm an Enneagram 3 and I just want to get shit done, but you have to think about the context and how your members are going to perceive this. They don't like things to get in the way of their just doing their business, right? So a switch for you that helps you may not feel helpful to them, and it might feel like a pain. So how can you make it more fun or easier for them? And then customer support. So this is probably a little bit out of order, but I threw it in here. This is one of the considerations that you want to have in mind when you're making this transition, because you will need to probably opt into the onboarding package that the new platform offers. Again, see how they can help. Some of it might be included. Some of it might be that you can pay for a support package, and that just really might be worth it because your team may not have the capacity for this. So think about, where are you located, and then where is the platform support team located, and how do those time zones relate to each other? So if you're in the US and the customer service is all overseas, then the time zones could be challenging. If you're on the East Coast, that might be okay. If you're on the West Coast like me, it's hard to line up with overseas time zones during the business day. So something to consider. Okay, and then just future proofing. So will the platform grow with you? Because you don't want to do this again, right? Because unless you're really a shiny object person and you really like to change software and drive your team and your members crazy, you don't want to do it more than once. Here are some things to look for. Multi-location support. You may be good with one location. If you're good with one location, I would really challenge you. Do you need to switch your platform? But if you want to switch your platform because there are things that are really important to you, go for it. Think ahead, though. There are some platforms that support multi-locations better than others. So just ask those questions. What does this look like? Are they separate accounts? Can my members, use their meeting room credits at other locations, et cetera, et cetera? So if you're thinking about switching, make sure it's for the long haul. You don't want to switch all the time, probably. So, just a couple of, these are just, high level things you're going to ask, whether you're looking for your first space management platform or looking to switch. Is there multi-location support? Or thinking about the future and being able to scale. So make sure you ask how well the platform supports multiple locations. Some do better than others. So what does that experience look like for your team on the back end and for members on the front end? For example, can they use a meeting room in another location pretty seamlessly and use their meeting room credits? So just talk through how that works. Again, integrations. Most of the big platforms that have been around for a while, so Office R&D, Yardi, et cetera, have integrations with direct integrations with door access, some of the mail platforms, but not all of them. They don't all have all integrations. So if there is a tech stack that you're using and you need to make a change, then take a look at the integrations that are directly supported by the new platform and those that you'll have to create yourself through Zapier or, some other approach. Sometimes it's not that hard through APIs to build your own integration. The team that I work with just created one in CoLevel to pull in new Office R&D member information. It works really seamlessly and really nicely. Not that hard. And then ongoing updates. Again, what does their roadmap look like? If there's something in particular that you're hoping to see in the platform, how far away it is, et cetera. And then again, this is where the Facebook group can be really helpful. Talk to other operators using the platform. But again, I wouldn't ask just vague general questions. Do you like X platform? Jump on a call with somebody who's a user and say, this is specifically what I'm interested in. How is that going for you and your team? So pick things that are actually really important to you that maybe your current platform doesn't have. And maybe they could do a little walkthrough for you, screen share, or just talk you through how it's working for them. So just be really specific when you're looking for feedback. That's how you're going to get the best in. Okay, so again, if you're thinking about switching, figure out what's not working as well as you'd like it to in your current system. What do you not have that you'd like to see that actually makes an impact on your business, that makes it worth switching? And identify platforms that have really good though. And again, this is where even before you do tours of those platforms with the platform sales team, this is where you might pop into the Facebook group and ask somebody, hey, I really want better reporting. Can you show me what the reporting looks like on X platform? How's that working for you? You have multiple locations, or do you have mostly offices, or do you have mostly flex desks? The type of inventory that you have in your spaces will also have an impact on which platform works the best for you. And then assess the migration process. Okay, what's the workflow? What's it going to be like for your team? What's it going to be like for your members? Roughly how much time is this going to take? Over what period? And really, create a project in Asana for it and just really think through all the steps. Sometimes when I want to tackle a new project, that's what I do. I sit down and I make an Asana project so that I just kind of do a brain dump of everything it's going to take to make that happen, because it's easy to forget the details. Go through it with your team, get input, and make sure you're still ready for it. And think long term. So be thinking about, what do the next 5 years look like for you and your company? And what functionality do you need to support that growth? Okay, and again, don't forget, co-working software is still young. Some platforms are really new. Others have been around for longer and have more stability and more engineering resources behind them, but they're still relatively new. We're not talking about, Microsoft and Google here. We are talking about platforms that have been in business for 10 years or less. So the key is finding the right balance between innovation and reliability, and also your own expectations for what you're going to get out of the software. So my advice would be, do your homework, ask really specific questions about requirements that are important to you and your business. Don't rush the decision. Ask all the questions that you have. Think on it with your team. Make your project plan for your transition. Make sure it makes sense. Interview a couple of other platforms. Interview a couple of other operators who are using those platforms, and just make sure you're good with your decision, and then make the move. So love to continue this conversation in the Facebook group. If you're in there, I always encourage you to ask really specific questions, and ask for input from someone who's running a business like yours, that's office heavy, or that's meeting room heavy, or whatever it is that you're trying to solve for. Ask for input from people who have the experience that you're looking for. It's risky to jump into a Facebook group and ask kind of a broad question and not know who's answering. Have they had this experience themselves, or are they just making up an answer because they like to give answers in Facebook groups? So that's another advantage of joining one of our paid programs, is you get our coaches. We see software across the board, and we kind of get into the weeds. I don't as much, but our coaches do, and they know what they're looking at, and they can answer specific questions based on not just an N of one, but a pool of operators who are running businesses that are more similar to yours. So if you're thinking about platform switching, I hope this is helpful. We'll see you same place, same time next week.